let me introduce myself first. My name is Jon Bartman. I'm the co-founder of Jameson Legaltech, which is a legal tech consortium that looks after innovative new legal tech solutions, find what is the best in the market, and then opening them up to our Jameson Legal contacts, which as an established recruitment company, we have 12 years experience of recruiting lawyers, both in-house and to private practice. So we have a large database of interested individuals that want to find out about tech. Now, bringing this back to today, we're really excited to be hosting a panel full of unbelievably great people across the legal tech spectrum. And we're going to be talking about investment and funding within the legal tech market and within the industry. And you couldn't get three better people than the people that are sat on the panel today, people who have actually been there, done it, and continue to do it on a daily basis. So they will be able to open your eyes to how to raise money, where to raise money, and some of the lessons they've learned on that journey of how not to raise money. And that makes it kind of very exciting. I'd just like to thank ELTA for organizing this today, and I'm a very proud ambassador for ELTA in the UK. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So there is a chat function at the bottom. If you click on it, and everyone who knows Zoom, and I'm sure you will do, feel free to write your questions in there. We may open the floor towards the end as well, so people can ask questions. Feel free to keep your cameras off. It's anonymity that we're looking for, is no problem. So it would be very nice, I think, to start off with, if the panel were to introduce themselves and give a little bit about who they are and where they've come from. Looking at my camera, we'll start with Aidas on the left.
Thank you, John. And hello, everyone. I'm Aidas, and I'm a co-founder at Amberlaw, which is cloud-based law practice management software, which is used now in more than 40 countries. And I'm an engineer, and actually, I got the journey to the legal tech was a little bit accidental, but I was a co-founder of one of the first venture capital funded software businesses in the Baltics, and we were running big projects, and I was dealing a lot with lawyers. So I didn't like the fact that we were running projects with Outlook and Excel sheets. And then after talking to them, we were suddenly in the middle of legal tech. So
that's excellent. We're going to come on a little bit more about your journey a little bit later. In fact, very soon. Nick, that's the next one along.
Firstly, John, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. My background is in web development. I was a head of a development team for 10 years, and we built all sorts of complex bespoke projects ranging from e-commerce to SaaS products. And we had a number of law firm clients over those years. I built a virtual data room in 2008 for law firm Ashford's, and learned a lot about virtual data rooms in the process, and eventually launched my own company in 2016, Ruby Data. Since then, I've also launched a consultancy business to help other firms build bespoke legal tech called Legal Legends. And I am involved with a number of projects such as the Society for Computers in Law, Centre for Legal Innovation, and Barclays Eagle Labs.
That's quite a list. It's excellent to have you here, Nick, and I'm sure everybody in the audience today is going to learn quite a lot from both yourself and Aidas, especially on how to set up your own legal tech, and I'm sure there are quite a few of those. Zach, it would be great if you could introduce yourself. No, you're on mute there.
I was just seeing if you were paying attention. Thanks, John. And I am, if I'm a little bit slow, I'm still staring at Nick's background, wondering why we're not doing this in person wherever he is. But so my name's Zach Posner. I am a co-founder at the legaltech fund. We are an early stage investor investing in companies that are transforming the world of law. I know that tonight there's a lot of folks that think about the law firm world, that think about software to power in-house departments and things along those lines, but we think the world of law is just a massive place, and it really touches on everything that we do personally and professionally. And thrilled to be here.
Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. Obviously, Zach is at the cutting edge of everything good that is happening in terms of investment into legal tech, and it's certainly something that is growing on a monthly or daily basis in terms of innovative new legal techs that need funding. So lovely to have you here. I'm going to start the conversation, and I know the two founders have already started to introduce their companies a little bit more. I think it'll be really useful for everybody to hear a little bit more about the journey from idea through to, hold on a minute, I've got a real product that is now functioning and it's being used in law firms. And Aidas, obviously Ambler is super successful already. It would be really interesting to hear from you a little bit more about that journey at the beginning.
Yeah, so I started building cloud before the term was invented, and back in 1999, I was a software architect of the worldwide's first cloud-based core banking system, and we built a platform that was used by, let's say, multiple external parties, and later on, and basically, it was really, sometimes hard to convince people that it's a good thing for them. Like, for example, if you have a car dealer and you come to them and start explaining that they can do, they can sell, they can sign lease agreements online. Back in 1999, that was still a little bit exotic. But what we understood that if you want to push tech to non-techie people, you need to come with something like that's a total like a no-brainer. So something very easy, very intuitive, and so that you do not bring more complexity by bringing a totally new way of doing things. All right. So after that I work for I think most of the companies that have Deutsche in their name, and we were dealing with B2B solutions, with B2C solutions, some, let's say, and that was and I was running quite large software house, and so we had also to deal with lawyers because, for example, we were working in the banking sector and we had clients that had like billions in assets, and so let's say confidentiality, liabilities, and and I was working with the leading law firms in the Baltics, with some law firms in Germany and some other countries, and I saw that they're not using tools. So we were using project management tools because we couldn't run our business otherwise. But law firms, they were fine with Outlook and Excel sheets, basically. And then we start talking to I start talking to lawyers and try to understand why it is the case. And then I understood that project management tools that we used in software projects, they were way too sophisticated for them. And on the other hand, there was a lack of simple solutions on the market that would cover their process well. And then we did the research, and then we said, okay, let's build something for lawyers. So that was the start. and I think let's say it was it worked quite successfully because now we have clients in 40 countries, and they are actually pretty happy with us.
I would say it's pretty very successful, Aidas, and yeah, Amblo is a great solution for lawyers worldwide. So it's kind of interesting though that you didn't come from that legal background, but actually just saw the gap in the market or what was not being done. And I agree with you. If I had £1 for everyone that said I'm happy with my inbox and Excel and that's how I run my life from every lawyer, I'd have a lot of money by now, because lawyers tend to take the easy route. Nick, moving this over to you as a founder, Ruby Datum obviously is a super successful company these days. How did it get to that point in terms of where you started from and where you saw that gap in the market?
Yeah, sure. So the gap almost found us, because I was building bespoke projects for many industries at the time. And we had a law firm, Ashford's, run by a great guy at the time, Gary Mackay, who was very forward thinking and decided to task us with building this virtual data room as a project. And that was in 2008. And then about 6 to 8 years later, despite having lots of really good feedback on the platform, we'd learned a lot from that development and scaling the platform. But it was at that point where we were ready to develop something completely new with all the lessons we'd learned. And I was about 10, 12 years into the company I was working for at the time. And I wanted to leave and start my own business. I'd had many ideas of projects over the years. But this particular one resonated because Ashford's wanted it for themselves. My previous employers, I had a lot of good loyalty built between us. I've been hard working for 8 years. They looked after me really well as I ran this virtual data room project, and had a very good relationship with the client as well, Ashford. So we decided to all band together to start Ruby Datum. And I had a development team working for me at the time at Optics. So we built the product together with me as a lead architect. And when we launched in May 2016, we launched simultaneously with Ashford's as our first client, which became a master user of the platform. And they're now a shareholder in the business, as well as my previous employers. I didn't have much experience working with the legal industry beyond just a few firms that have come to us. And I think I was a bit naive, assuming that the ones I had dealings with were representative of the industry as a whole. Because 2014, when we started to build this project into 2016, we soon realized that the law industry was at that point quite backwards in terms of technology, and the journey since then has been extremely challenging. But fortunately, we persevered and we built some good connections. We had some innovative approaches to marketing, like we started the LawTech London networking group, which has now become LawTech Live. And we've built some great connections and been able to push a product that way. So here we are now, successfully having just raised on Crowdcube, which I guess we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, it's been an exciting journey, and not without a great degree of challenge.
Look, I think it's really interesting that the key takeaway from that is that from idea, sometimes it doesn't necessarily manifest itself in an overnight success. Oh yeah, I've got the idea, and by the end of March, I'm expecting to have everything live, and then by the end of April, I'm going to be doing a seed round, and then I'm going to be funding for it takes guts and glory in order to get to where you need to get to. And Nick's 6 years of guts, I'm sure has paid dividends eventually, but there's lots of part of that journey that makes it a really hard journey. So yeah, it's really interesting. I'll move on to the next question. Oh, sorry, Nick, were you going to say something?
So could I, just add to something? One of the biggest changes between now and then is when we were first coming into the market, and I know many other legal tech companies had a similar experience. People get excited about some new, amazing technology that will solve these challenges. But there is a degree of what I call like the old boys club at the top. And we've had the challenge back then, and it still exists now, but back then certainly was that there was a lot of the bigger players with historical kind of outdated legacy technology, but that were being taken out for nice meals and being flown to Vegas to watch UFC fights and all sorts of like perks that weren't about the technology that made our lives incredibly difficult as a startup that didn't have that kind of capital. But fortunately in 2022, a lot of that has been dissolved. Whilst there's still traces, that's been an incredibly challenging part of our journey.
It's interesting. I've seen that firsthand, funnily enough, and it still goes on today. By the way, anyone in the audience wants to take me to Vegas to any UFC fights, I'm open to doing that. Next question. I'm moving on. And this is more, I suppose, to Zach, who's at the front line of this, in terms of, are we entering the golden age at the moment of legal tech investment? Is it kind of at its pinnacle right now? Or do you think that there's room for it to grow?
No, so I mean, a couple of things. First, I think that just listening to Nick and Aidas speak, it's like we could spend an hour on all the concepts that they just brought up because they were awesome. And I almost like don't want to move away from a lot of the stuff they did. But I guess, John, to your question. So like, yeah, I mean, you say golden age, I think backwards. And I think that's like looking backwards and saying that was the best. No, I don't even think I don't think we've even started. I mean, I think we're in the warm-ups on the field right now, you know, and maybe just to go a little higher level, because we're thinking a little bit more, you know, these guys are like in the weeds every day. We're thinking a little bit higher level day to day. And I think there's like two macro trends that are happening. The first one is just this concept of the world is complex and it's growing more complex every day. And, you know, that's going to lead to more regulation. And it's, you know, we're based out of the United States, but we invest globally. We think a lot in your neck of the woods about things like GDPR. GDPR is almost like trying to fix some challenges and problems that popped up from the internet and what we call now Web 2 and kind of the power of these platforms amassed. But it's like right around the corner, there's this thing called Web 3 coming, and that is a completely decentralized economy almost. And we haven't even started to think about this. So we see more and more regulations, which means we need more and more legal help. And attorneys right now are in extraordinarily demand. You know this, you know, you kind of see what some of these, you know, firms are doing to grab attorneys. In the US, I think that the average hourly rate's $346 an hour for an attorney, which may not seem that high to anybody on this call, but if you think about the average median salary is about $19 an hour, you know, there's a massive disconnect saying everything that we think about, legal services still aren't available for 95% of the population out there. So, that demand is real. And then, you know, almost the second, and then the other thing we see is just that this is the greatest time in the world to launch a legal tech company. You know, there's funding readily available. There weren't dedicated investors like us, you know, in the last, and we are now here. You know, there's anybody can now, what used to cost $1 million to go set up servers and infrastructure and all of this stuff, you can pop your credit card into Amazon and for $10, and about 10 minutes later, you're kind of up and going. So I think you take some of these larger trends, just saying, you know, we're going to need more and more legal help, and it's easier and easier to start a company. I think that they all just lead to, we're just getting started on the legal tech side.
Yeah, no, I kind of, obviously, I agree with you. I think that it's whether there will be casualties along that way, that the early adopters, not the early adopters, more the people that came in with technology that was seen as amazing. And I often come across many of them in my day-to-day existence that have, like Nick said at the beginning there, have done really well at the beginning and built quite large companies, but the tech is falling behind. And they're not doing much in order to make it relevant. And the new guys coming up who are raising money and the ability to make tech more relevant, I think it's going to be a really interesting playing field going
The
forward.
greatest, I mean, the same way I talked about server infrastructure, that's the same thing for machine learning infrastructure or natural language processing. You know, Google and Amazon now have these toolkits you can just adopt in 10 minutes. And literally just 4 or 5 years ago, you would have invested millions and millions of dollars to get to a fraction of the level as to where this tech is right now. So, you know, you talk about golden age. I say today is the best day that has ever existed to go start a company in this space.
Aidas, I just asking you, do you think it's becoming easier is the wrong word, because I know that you're all working so hard, but do you think that the landscape changing is making this an easier landscape to go out for investment at the moment?
Yeah, it's getting easier, definitely, because I think if you would look like what was happening like 5 years ago, so there was barely anything in the legal tech space at all. If I agree with that, it's we don't see the golden age yet, and I don't know, maybe it's a golden start or not. So I think we will be able to evaluate some years later. But there is enormous potential, and I think if I look also like, you know, from what we are discussing and where we want to build, and we didn't even start, because you know, still like 95% they are still ahead of us, and it's not you know, that we want to equip each and every lawyer with the tools and then or get rid of lawyers, which is often, you know, the conflict that that we are discussing. But the thing is that or the fact is that lots of people, they don't have access to justice, and because for some people it's just too expensive, but just there is another statistic, I do not remember now the source exactly, but I've read some time ago that over 70% of legal issues, they never get professional legal help. So on one hand, technologies make let's say reduce the need for for manual work in some areas. So let's say, and often we discuss with lawyers that we are like evil guys who want to, you know, exterminate legal professionals with some smart technology. But the thing is that with the technology, we can make legal services much more efficient and much more affordable, much broader. I mean, I could compare it to IT itself. Like if you would look like operating systems, they appeared, I think, around 1950, right around that time. I mean, if we would look back then, let's say, how many applications like we had. I mean, I know in small business segment or in the consumer segment, it was like zero, because in the first operating system was used for moon mission, right? And then suddenly everything changed, and so was the humanity exterminated, or let's say, I mean, did we get any major trouble? The answer is no. I mean, it accelerated the progress, and I think the life quality has radically increased. So I expect to see same processes in the legal space, because over the last 100 years it didn't change too much.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting, and I've spoken to a few companies out in the Baltics that are really revolutionizing that kind of free or reduced legal advice spend, and, you know, making some of that machine learning being the first port of call, giving access to lawyers across the world. It's going to be a really interesting sort of next step forward, and there's no doubt about it. A question to everybody here, and obviously there's going to be a number of people today in the audience who are, and they've already put some stuff in the chat, thinking of or have started their own legal tech solution and their legal tech startup. What do you think that the key do's and don'ts would be for people who are seeking investment for their legal tech solution? I'll start with Nick. Is there
certainly the biggest do for us was certainly get your first clients before you start anything, because not only do you have a client when you launch, but also you have invaluable feedback, and if you can, multiple clients, because the inner workings of maybe one law firm or one company don't necessarily apply to others. So having as much input as possible, I think, is critical, and just to have lots of conversations, watch webinars, listen to other people's story, and just learn and learn and learn, and try to fine tune your intuition as much as possible. The don't, can you come back to me on that one? I don't have anything off the,
no problem. Zach,
off the top of my head.
You've seen so many of these. Which ones have kind of are doing it right, and which ones would you say, yeah, you should stay away from doing that?
Yeah, Nick kind of nailed it. The big question that we think about is, do people care about what you're building? And that usually comes in the early days. In the earliest days, it's like, hey, do the founders understand the pain point? You know, then do they have any commitments from some early clients? Then that goes to saying, can they sign some people up? And then that goes to say, are people interacting with the software? Are they using the software? Do they love the product? And what we found, I mean, almost any product that's used extensively, the business model, the founders will find a way to monetize it, and the company will go on to interesting things. Where I think two don'ts are, the first one is being like stubborn to your vision. You know, when you're hearing feedback otherwise, I'm not telling you to jump every 5 seconds, but like most people's visions are, we found like a lot of the visions and the entrepreneurs that come in and have these ideas, they're actually the right ideas. And, you know, and the question is just both, you know, when are they the right idea, and what is the execution going to look like to get there? So we don't doubt that the future world looks like the entrepreneur suggests it may. You know, it's just the questions, what do you do between now and then? So, you know, what happens is, if, you know, as Nick was saying, if he goes out and talks to 5 customers and they all are shifting him this way, like, you know, maybe do you go that way, or do you stick to your original vision? So that's one. And then I think the second is, you know, it's kind of a spinoff of that first one, where you see companies that just like keep building more and more and more to their products because, you know, a customer says, oh, we love this, we needed to do this, or we needed to do that. And they go and they start building all these things. And what that means is just like, nobody cares enough about what they're doing at their core. So, you know, and that's the way that, you know, we see companies get themselves into trouble. It's just that they're spread too thin and they never get really good at anything. So nobody really cares about, you know, anything that they're doing in a meaningful way, because, you know, you can do whatever your grand vision is, like you can do it all. You just can't do it all today. So what are the key things? Well, you know, where are you going to show some traction? Where are you going to get some customers that are passionate about your software and are excited to work with you?
That's so, yeah, again, it's really interesting, because I suppose when you're looking for that first customer, which we've all sort of said it's so important, and I know when we're speaking to anyone, and we can help them get that first customer, or we can certainly talk around the vision, but to be led by that first customer is a real tricky one, because they're going to want to shape that product into something that they want for their use, even though it may not be the use that has got universal approach. I don't know whether there's anything that you've experienced on that side to kind of bat them back and say, look, I want you to be my first client, or I want you to be my first major client, but I'm not going to shape it into exactly the same way that you want it to be. Can you be that bold?
Yeah, I've operated through, I'm relatively new to the investing side of the house, and I've spent most of the last 20 years operating. And that's the line that you're always draw is to kind of be bold enough with your vision, but to get, to kind of like take the advice, but not to build custom software for every single client. And I think that's the delicate line you walk in the beginning. The more, to Nick's point, if you can go up and find 5 or 6 clients, it makes it a lot easier because you can extract what's at the core. And I think at the end of the day, the pain point's either big enough where they accept that and they're thrilled that you're able to help them with that pain point, or if they just say, no, we're not doing it unless if it's this, then maybe it's not a big enough pain point for them.
Yeah.
But I'd welcome feedback from others.
What you said is, I think, bang on the mark there. One of the things I quickly learned, some advice I was given early on, is be careful working with the bigger firms because they can literally end up owning you as a client, especially working with lawyers. I mean, if you think about what a lot of their profession is around confrontation and facing confrontation, they can be quite intimidating sometimes to work with. And if they've got an idea for how they think your platform should work, they can make quite a convincing case. And if you push back, be quite defensive. So having those communication skills to deal with those kinds of people is quite paramount.
Do you think you've lost, and this is a question to you and Aidas as well, do you think you've lost business by saying no?
Actually, saying no is not a solution, because let's say I made experience not only in the legal field but also in other cases. So especially if lawyers are very smart people, and what my experience dealing with smart people is that who are not tech people. So when you start discussing products and their needs, they are so eager to tell you what you need to do and how things need to be done. And it's not about agreeing or disagreeing with that, but it's about turning this discussion about into discussion about what problems are we trying to solve. So what is the business case here? And because this is what they know much better than I could probably ever know. But we should discuss this, and then I come with the proposal how to solve it. And so far, I think we managed to keep this this way of communication. We never say no, and we never say yes. Except if it's like straightforward, then yes, then for sure. But most of the situations, they're much more sophisticated than that. So, and but I think if you fail this this task, it might be very difficult to build anything at all, because either you will start building for yourself, either you will start building for particular clients, and the bigger, the more convincing, let's say, the clients with more money, but you will end up with having a product that doesn't particularly fit to anyone at the end of the day. So that's, I don't know if that is in DOS category or don'ts.
I completely agree.
Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I was just saying, I completely agree. I think that the key is to just keep asking questions and trying to understand why that feature they're asking for is being asked for, and trying to really get under the hood of like the business case that it's trying to solve. And by taking time to listen, I think you win a lot more support.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's always a fine line though, and of course we're salespeople at that stage, so you never want to say no to anybody, but you also can't say yes to everybody or yes to everything. So yeah, a really important advice there. Like
lawyers do. A lot of their training is about around that.
Lawyers say maybe to everything, Nick. That's the dumb thing. Right, moving on to the next question, which is, look, Zach, you've invested really successfully already, super successful within this space. I know that you are receiving a lot of approaches on a daily basis and monthly basis. Are you seeing any trends in the type of tech that's coming to you and saying, hey, we're X?
No, I mean, I think we see the base. I think we see like two levels of trends. The first is to your specific, the basic contract automation. There's lots of spaces that are kind of hot. But I think that, the biggest trend that we just see in the space is more dollars going into it. Legal tech used to be this taboo type of thing. It is not. It is front and center now. You are seeing the dollars grow quickly. They're coming from the generalist firms. So, and they're kind of coming from the top down. So like you're seeing private equity funds now moving into venture. You're seeing growth stage venture moving into Series A, Series B. You're seeing that move down to seed. And I think, when we think about those buckets, like we look at the world and say there's like, we bucket the companies we interact with in three different categories. One is companies selling to law firms. Second is companies selling into clients. And then the third is more of this larger regulatory or enabling the regulatory ecosystem. And I think as the money has come down, that third bucket, which is about half of the dollars that we see being invested into that regulatory ecosystem bucket, we're seeing amazing stuff. There is a company that we just highlighted in one of our recent newsletters, and they help on the security compliance side. The company's called Drata, and they raised in January of 2021, they raised $3 million. In June of 2021, they raised $25 million. And in December, they raised $100 million. They raised 3 rounds of capital in a year. I mean, those types of activities used to happen over the course of, maybe 10 years, if that. And so we're seeing just with more dollars coming in, more stuff like that happening. We're seeing on the regulatory side, we think it's going to start moving into the client side and also into law firm side to some extent.
So, sorry, to explain that a little bit more. Were they able to raise money based on success that they had in between that period, or because actually as they became bigger as a brand, as an idea, people thought, oh my God, this is where I want to be?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay, so there is an element of them doing pretty well in between those periods.
Yeah, but I mean, keep in mind, it takes several months to get around the financing closed. Even in no matter what people say, everybody, and I think it's actually a theme of what we've been talking about. You mentioned at the beginning, we do this, we raise our angel, we raise our seed, and it's success is kind of a straight line. Like it doesn't work like that. Even in the most beautiful cases, things take time and there's like friction in the process. So, I think it's a little bit of all of the above, but it's also the fact that there's just a lot of capital in the system right now.
Look, and that brings me on to sort of my next question, and this is again to all three, but we'll start with Zach, because he sees these people at different stages. When is the right time? I've got my legal tech solution. I know what I'm going to do. It's, one of an interesting thing that contract automation is loads of them in Finland right now. I know that I have some kind of differentiate. When is the right time for me to be raising money? Should I bootstrap? Should I, try and keep it going as long as possible with my own money, or do I open that up fairly early on? I'll start with you, Zach.
So we've discussed a lot of this internal. We think about that question a lot, and a teammate of ours, Casey, she kind of has really challenged us to say, hey, that's part of that's almost a privilege to be able to say that, where there's a lot of folks that can't make that, that want to start something but they can't do it. They need to raise capital. So first and foremost, we think it's a personal decision based upon a lot of different scenarios that the entrepreneur is in. But I think at a higher level, like what we think about traditionally is like the right time to raise is like when you don't need it. and especially, and it's a lot of it is market based. Like right now we're sitting in a spectacular market, and there is so I would encourage people, like if I was, to raise as quickly as feasible, where you're going to get a valuation that kind of makes sense for the company. But there's, as I was telling you, all this money is kind of moving downwards. So I think that you need to be able to do a couple of things. Like you need to be very honest with your investor partner, and these raises should be a handshake. It's like you're going to do your best to make them a multiple of their money. And it's when kind of people get too fixated on things like valuation, but they don't understand how they're going to grow into that valuation where you have problems. So I think in general, look, obviously the longer you can go, the better bootstrapping. But I also say that should be aligned to what the market looks like. And, somebody told me once, if there's money on the table, like take it off the table. There's lots of reasons that these companies go well, but there's one way that these companies go bad. And that's, if you run out of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Aidas, I don't know whether in your journey, when you were first thinking, I've got this idea, am I going to bootstrap, or when was the right time for you to kind of go out to the market?
Well, actually, our story was probably not a very typical story in the startup space, because we were used to build say serious stuff, and we knew what will it take and what will it cost before we start doing it. And we bootstrapped. I think we made a typical mistake for a typical European startup. Like there is a famous joke, what's the difference between a German and a US-based startup? And the difference is that if you have 5 guys in each, so in a US startup, you will have VP of business development, VP of technology, VP of marketing, and maybe a few engineers. And in the German startup, you will have 5 engineers. And yeah, so that was let's say our story as well. But I think if you are building B2B SaaS business, and I cannot tell much about other business cases, but I can tell about B2B SaaS. So prepare to build an MVP, prepare to show some traction, and some traction in the form of some revenue, and then I think there is no one good answer, let's say, when to raise money. But here I would say that at an optimal time, because what means raising money? It means you get funds on board, and it makes yes, it brings cash, but it makes many things much let's say, it slows you down in some point, because you need to get formalized, you get a lot of rules and so on. So let's say for B2B SaaS companies, at least I would recommend to bootstrap, to find a good accelerator that is focused, that is growth focused, and that can also provide some funding, because from what I've seen, usually guys who put in own money, they hear about you more on average than those who don't. And because you might end up, in some free pizzas and craft beer, but that's not, I think, what helps to move forward and build business. And I think you can, the startups can start looking for VC funding after they have like 5,000 to 10,000 euro in monthly revenues. And yeah, That's
Yeah,
well, at
interesting.
least from what I've seen, let's say, from what I can share based on what we did, based on what I've seen was other projects.
Yeah, no,
And yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So I think that was it.
Yeah, totally interesting, because you have that vision, you knew what you were doing. Some people may not have that kind of programming vision behind them. A lot of people that I meet are lawyers that have just seen a gap in the market, and that's what they've seen. I was a corporate M&A lawyer. I've seen the gap in the market, and I'm going to go for it because my life was a pain, and I think I've got a solution that is going to improve that. So look, I want to move on because I've got a couple of more questions, and I really want to get through some of these. And I think it's really important. There's a quick question to Zach, which is, what do you look for in the founders in terms of what kind of individuals they are? Are you looking at them as well as the tech that they're running? And if so, what are you looking for?
So yes is the answer. We're an early stage investor, so the ideas are kind of great, but but if the ideas aren't there, like, we need to back a team that can kind of pivot the business to wherever that it needs to go. So it's all about the team. I think in the beginning, we want people that are passionate about this stuff, and we found that people that really understand the industry that they're coming from is important, because what happens is they don't look at their endeavor as being risky. And I know that sounds crazy because most people think starting a company is the riskiest thing you can do, but it's kind of the opposite. It's kind of like they have a little secret. Like, they know that the world is broken in some way and they know that they have the answer. And they don't look at it as a risk. They look at it as like, we have to go get this and go work on this immediately before anybody else realizes our little secret. So, I think that's what's really there at the core when you have a founder that really understands the space. And then I think the other question is just like, it comes down to execution. A lot of these things, like we talked a lot about ideas. Ideas are cheap. Execution is everything. There's really not that many original ideas, but it's just about execution. And that comes out so clearly, as we interact with founders and they give us updates from meeting to meeting. Like, there's just, I can't explain to you how differentiated this comes back. Some founders come back, every week, and they think kind of in weekly increments. What progress did they make this week? And then some come back 6 weeks later and, they've made a little progress. Some come back and say, well, here's what we did the first week. Here's what we did the second week. And now we're already on the, so it kind of clearly, you clearly differentiate.
Yeah, personality is everything. But that's also about how to build any kind of successful company. It doesn't matter if it's legal tech or marketing or financial services. If the personality fit and the hunger is there and people are driven by the right things, then they're going to be part of a successful business. There's no doubt about it. So look, there's something I really want to touch on, and we've only got 10 minutes, and there might be some questions. Please feel free to put those questions in. Nick, super successful fundraise, which finished last couple of weeks ago, I think, and you were 200% subscribed to your last crowdfunding campaign.
It was a little less than 200.
Okay, sorry, but
we're aiming for 150 and we raised 200.
Way oversubscribed, and you went down the Crowdcube route and crowdfunding through Crowdcube. It would be super interesting to find out why, and then how was that experience, and would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. In answer to the latter one, absolutely would do it again. There was a number of reasons we went down the Crowdcube route. Firstly, they're a client, and it made for a really nice narrative, and we want to collaborate with them a lot more and work with their clients as well. So it was a nice way to grow that partnership a bit more. Secondly, it was exceptionally good PR for us to tell a story that we've been able to raise funds from 200 odd investors. I think really adds to our business case. and shows that like we're quite aligned to our vision. Thirdly, I do wholeheartedly believe in building good relationships with people first, and VC firms in particular. I think if you end up partnering with or receiving funds from the wrong kind of VC, it can actually be quite detrimental to your business, especially if your visions misalign. So we were very cautious about where we were taking the funds from in that first instance, because we wanted to be able to prove that we can use that money very wisely in order to grow our company. And we've made it no secret that in 12 to 18 months, we do plan on a further fundraise of over 10 mil in order to grow the business further, with a lot more credibility from having used the 200,000 we've raised now very wisely and been able to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And finally, it's been really nice to be able to bring those friends and family and various supporters within the industry that I've been able to work with over the years that have supported me beyond just financially, to be able to bring them on the journey as well and start to reciprocate in a few years. I think that's brilliant. Plus it's EIS eligible, which is a government incentive in the UK, which allows investors to claim back 40% from their tax bill, as well as various capital gains advantages, which makes it quite a lucrative investment also.
Yeah, look, I think it was super successful, and I think again, because of the marketing approach behind it as well, and it wasn't just a one kind of approach of, it wasn't just on the site. You did a lot of work around the outside of that to make sure people understood the vision and understood where the product was going, and I think that's super important, which is, go ahead.
I think the big difference between traditional kind of fundraising and how we did it was that the investors that came on board, the majority knew us already, and they've worked with us over the years, and they know how we work. They know we've got good values. They've had a positive experience, whether it's someone I used to employ like 8 years ago. We actually had a developer I used to hire that came into a lot of money and believed in the company, or just we've had many companies that work in other legal tech providers that have talked with us, either whether it's an integration or we've collaborated in some sort of way. Like they get what we're about, they get the vision, they get our values, and they bought into that.
No, it's super interesting. Now, Aidas, you've just finished a fundraising a fundraising round, or you've been through it. You went a different route. You went to private institutions.
Well, we went to VCs.
VCs, and on that journey, because obviously it's completely different to the crowdfunding route. Is there anything that you would say to people? Yeah, that was a pitfall. That was something that I didn't foresee, or that was something that I wouldn't want to.
Actually, first thing is that be prepared to talk to like 50 to 100 VCs before you will find the right ones. Then be prepared that the whole process will take from 3 to 6 months or even longer. Be prepared that VCs will ask you to do this and that, and this could sometimes become a trap. If you start gambling at some point and start doing things for which you don't have funds, and the investment is still not there. So, but obviously that it worked pretty well, because I'm here and I can talk about our experience. So, and actually we had luck with our VCs, because they bring a lot of added value, and they are my trusted advisors. They help with the network and so on. So we got, we had really luck with the VCs, but it can also turn into a totally different story, and there are like bad examples. So, I think that it's important to be prepared. To be patient, and to find the right ones, and not, you know, just to run and grab whatever is on the table, because, you know, it could be a mousetrap as well.
Yeah, definitely. Look, we're really running out of time. I've got one more question, actually, which I think is it's the whole panel again. And Zach, I know obviously you're sitting in America, but I know that you are, because we've spoken many times before, you're very heavily invested into European legal tech, and certainly have made a number of investments into European legal tech already. And I know that the appetite is there. How do you think, and again, this is based around the audience that are sitting here in front of us, how do you think that European legal tech startups are going to be able to compete against the well-funded American startups or the American companies? Zach, go ahead.
You know, I when I look at numbers in legal tech, you know, about 60% of the dollars go to US companies, probably 20 to 25% go to European. That is as strong of a breakdown towards Europe as any other vertical in the world. Like, you know, when you look at most other spaces, you see like 80% of the dollars into North America and 20% rest of the world. This is, I think legal tech, I think it's almost an even playing field. And I'm looking at like the fundings that have happened. You know, a company in your neck of the woods, Juro, just received the $20 million round, I think last week. So I think it's moving towards parity. I think that in the UK, I think that in Australia, I think that in Canada, there's a little bit more liberal laws over interpretation of unauthorized practice of law that gives a little bit more flexibility, where we see extraordinarily innovative stuff coming out. So I don't look at it as there's any leg down. You know, I think it's almost even, if not a leg up. And we spend we're spending a good amount of our days, you know, on the phone, and we're starting our days a little bit earlier to make sure we catch the companies during your work days. So I don't think that there's that much of, I don't think there's a disadvantage at all these days, actually.
Great. Ida, do you find that the American larger companies have more of an advantage to their European counterparts?
Well, actually, I think it depends, you know, on the playground, because as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, we are not even considering to enter US market right now, because there are like very strong competitors, well-established competitors, and you need to be very innovative, and but innovation is not enough. I mean, you need also the funding. But if we talk about other markets, and actually, if you would ask about competition with US companies in Europe, so I would say there is nearly none. Or let's say if we meet with our US competitors and we are in the shortlist, usually we beat them, and if we lose, then half a year later we beat them at the same client. So because it's I mean, it's just that there are, like, you know, quite different rules and quite different environment, quite different needs, and I think for US players, it's extremely difficult to adopt. And because in US, I mean, it's you know, it's US dollar, it's English language, it's like, you know, everything is harmonized. I mean, there are some differences, let's say, in different states, but if you like, if you are, you know, building law practice management software, so it's essentially the same, you know, for every state. In the rest of the world, it's a completely different story. So so we don't have we don't feel any competition from US companies. We didn't lose a single client to in competition to this date. So so therefore, I think we are doing pretty well, but I do not really feel pressure. Like, there are big players like Clear and like, which is trying to play internationally, but it's just trying, and they're well established in English speaking markets, but we don't see them anywhere else.
No, absolutely. But Clio were able to raise $250 million 6 months ago.
Yeah,
It aids their you know,
But
ability.
I would say, John, the growth dollars there, they're all over the world now. Like these
cool.
even the US funds with some of them, they're investing everywhere. I mean, that's my.
Well, look,
Yeah.
guys, we're ticked around. We're now at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to end this now and thank the panel so much. Properly interesting stuff. I hope that everybody managed to get some interesting viewpoints. If anyone has any questions, reach out to us on LinkedIn. Our names are there. I'm sure we're all willing to answer questions as and when they come up. But feel free to approach us. And I'd like to thank the panel and everybody that's turned up this evening.